everyone. We're going to record today's meeting just for your information. My name is Amber Houston Davey. I'm Vice President of ICF High Country, and I am so happy to have you all here joining us as we kick off Coaching Week. Really special time, and I'm hoping that you'll join us for all of our offerings as well as checking out offerings from around the world. So it's really a wonderful time for us to connect and learn from each other. Joining me here today, helping us out, is Stacy. Hi, Stacy. Stacy Harshman there, going to be helping us facilitate today as well. So I will open us up by introducing our speakers, and they both said that towards the end they'd like to reserve time for question and answers, and just from visiting with them I can tell that they're very easy to talk with and open, so I'm sure they'd welcome if you guys have questions along the way too. But I really want to welcome today, to kick us off here, Trigina Holly and Jonathan Wrights. They're here today to talk with us about what comes after coaching training. You know, we all put a lot of time and money and effort into this, and then how do we sort of keep putting one foot in front of the other? They'll take us behind the scenes in running a coaching practice and explore the tension between coaching and consulting. So that can come up as well. Trigina Holly offers leadership, high potential, and executive coaching to individuals and organizations focused on enhancing and improving peak performance through a sustainable, results-focused approach. Trigina is adjunct faculty with the University of Utah and the Pacific Leadership Academy in Honolulu, Hawaii. Trigina is co-author of A Coach Approach to Leadership and Professional Coaching Training, both accredited programs with ICF. She has a regular coaching spot on KUTV's Fresh Living show. Trigina, her husband, and 4 children reside in Sandy, Utah, and spend 4 seasons a year playing in the great outdoors. Trigina is also a board member with us here at ICF Country. Welcome, Trigina.
Thanks, Amber. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And speaking with Trigina this morning is Jonathan Wrights. Jonathan is a master's certified coach. He's also the co-founder of the Team Coaching Global Alliance and a top-rated speaker at the World Business and Executive Coaches Summit. He wrote Coaching Hacks, Simple Strategies to Make Every Conversation More Effective. Jonathan is a member of the faculty in the Weatherhead School of Management Coaching program at Case Western Reserve University. And I love on his website how he speaks to coaching the cause, not just the symptoms. Welcome, Jonathan. Thank you both so much, and I will hand it over.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Definitely appreciate you having us. Thanks for the conversation. Hey, and happy International Coaching Week to all of my brothers and sisters who coach. Excited about this. I love the fact that this event has come together. And if you were here earlier a few minutes ago in the meeting room, you will have heard me say this already. The event title we chose for today is What Comes After Coach Training. And this is especially a fun topic to dive into for me, because Trigina was one of my instructors as I worked from, well, actually, that was in the early stage of the process. I was getting ready to apply for my PCC. This is back before you had to get an ACC, before you had a PCC. So I said, you know what, I've been coaching for a long time. I'm going to go right for my PCC. And the school where Trigina taught at that time was one of the schools where I got a significant amount of my training. And I just pulled up my notes on from that class. Now I have Trigina doesn't even know this, because
yeah, I know this is going to be really scary. I have a
no.
I'm not sure about this, Jonathan.
No. You'll I think you'll appreciate this. I have with my neuroscience emphasis in my coaching and learning practice, I place a really high personal value on I take all my notes by hand, old school, with a piece of paper and a pen, because back in the old days, we used to use this thing called paper to write down notes, and you would drive your pen over it. Well, I went and found all my notes from those classes, and I have had a system since I was in college that I note the instructor name on the first page of the paper, and I put 5 stars underneath their name, and I cross out the stars through the course of the class based on my opinion of the particular instructor.
Now we're going to stop right there, and we're just going to move on to the agenda.
Oh,
Jonathan.
you're going to like where this is going. Most of my electrical engineering instructors in college ended up with 1 or 2 stars. The occasional instructor in continuing ed would, when I was in the broadcasting business, would end up with 3 or 4. Tragina is one of 2 from that period that had all 5 stars
Aw.
in place. I was pretty sure that was the case when we were talking the other day, but I didn't want to tell you that until I was sure, and I knew I could produce that particular document. And unfortunately, I left it in my office upstairs, or else I'd be holding it up to the camera right now to show you that.
No, you just wanted to make me nervous. You just wanted to put me on the hot seat here, Jonathan.
Well, we are storytellers, aren't we? So
We are. We are.
Well, so like I say, I'm very much excited about this conversation. So, Katrina, we worked through an agenda of the things we're going to talk about today, and there are 4 main targets here that we'll dive into. Coaching mindset, running a coaching business, shifting outcomes, consulting. Is there anything that you would put in front of our friends here that they should be sure to watch for from this overall agenda?
Yeah, I think one of the things I really, just in our talking, Jonathan, and both of our experiences, that I really want you to watch for is what we talk about and how we talk about operationalizing coaching. When you go through a coach training, right, we talk to you about the competencies, we talk to you about the models, we explain how to do coaching from a ICF standpoint. And what we're trying to really accomplish today is to bring to you, here's what comes, like the title says, after your coach training. How do you operationalize it? How do you really make it valuable to the clients while also staying true to the coaching model and to the competencies and to the ethics and everything about who we are as a coach? And I think that, Jonathan, you and I talked about this. I don't know that we always spend a lot of time talking about that in the coach training, because we're fairly busy making sure that everyone understands the competencies in the model. And there is, I think, a finesse to how you operationalize coaching and make it work for you. And so that's what I think I'd want them to watch for and think about ahead of what we're talking about. And maybe, kind of to underscore what we talked to the group about today.
Just out of curiosity, because I hope you will ask this same question to me after we hear your answer. How consistent is the coaching you do today to the coaching you learned about when you were in training?
Well, I would say it is consistent in that I don't violate the competencies or the ethics, and I generally cover it, but it is different than what I learned. It is different because a couple of things. One, I've learned a lot. Okay. So I've learned what works for my clients and what doesn't work. And I've learned how to tweak my, I'll call it process, my process within the competencies to what I really feel like I need to do. And then I would say for lack of better words, let go of the competencies in the model and and just applied it to who I am, made it who I am, how I show up as a coach. That'll be different than every single person on this call. And when I say I let go of them, it doesn't mean I violate them or I don't use them anymore. It just means that I really set them aside and just became comfortable with who I was as a coach and knew that they were a part of who I am. And they show up in a lot of different arenas that I work in: assessment centers, training, consulting. So I would say it's different. It's very different than when I first started because of wisdom and experience, but also because I just figured out who I am as a coach.
Love that. Love
How
that.
about you?
Definitely appreciate hearing that. I would probably say that it's pretty easy to tell I'm the same guy, but my coaching is very different. Like the prime example is that I talk way less now than I did when I started. I use fewer words, which, truthfully is learned behavior, and it's learned behavior in a whole bunch of different. I said this to somebody last week that I come from the camp that believes, why would I ever use 100 words when 10,000 would do? And what the way I have jokingly said that is, I'm a recovering consultant who believes coaching is more powerful.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that.
And I didn't fight that. I just said, you know what? I'm going to do both. I'm going to coach and consult. We're going to talk more about that coming up.
Right.
But now it looks very different in what it comes to life. And so I appreciated what you said. The foundation is still the same. It's still the competencies. It's still the commitment to ethics.
Right.
But because of what I've learned and because of what, I actually think it's also just partly getting better, repetitions.
Right. It's reps. And Jonathan, I so identified with your words about saying more with less.
Yeah.
I've heard that over and over. And I always thought you had to have these really cool questions, but you really don't. You have to have a really good question that is laser and concise and to the point. And I think my coach training, because I still do consulting as well, has made me a better consultant than I was previously. Which sounds, because they are different, that you approach them differently as a consultant versus a coach, what you bring to the table. But my coaching skills have improved my consulting, in my opinion.
That's so interesting, just in and of itself, and a great foundation to dive into the rest of the conversation. So let's go there. Let's talk about, first and foremost, the coaching mindset. Now, in the new and updated ICF core competencies that came out at the end of 2019 and became the guiding principles for what we do in the coaching world about a year ago, there is a competency around the coaching mindset. And I would suggest to you, this is something that's been very helpful to me as I think about what this actually means, is that the coaching mindset is the internal view of the same things that are externally on display in coaching presence. So coaching mindset and coaching presence work together to provide an experience for your clients. The inner conversation happens in coaching mindset, and it's built on really these three things. And I want to spend most of our time here on the bottom one. Yeah, we are there to help the client make discoveries. I tell a story pretty regularly about my brother and I have a deal that I will coach him at any time for 5 minutes. Now, what I should tell you is that my brother is a lawyer. He's a corporate and municipal lawyer. And he only calls me when he's writing legal briefs, when he's writing summaries for cases that he's got going on that are going to be shared with the opposing party and or the judge in these situations. And the deal is 5 minutes. And I realized very quickly that I had to rely on all of the discovery skills that we learn in coach training for a very simple but very powerful reason. And that is, I never know what the hell he's talking about in these coaching sessions. He'll call up and he'll say, blah, 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 Latin word, blah, 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 easement, blah, 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 building code, Latin word, Latin word, Latin word. And I'll say, okay, what are you hearing yourself say? I literally have no idea what he's talking about. So, okay, what are you hearing yourself say? Okay, how are those connecting? What's another way you could look at that? I'm doing all the things that we teach us to do in coach training. And like clockwork, before the second hand gets up to the 12, 5 minutes into the conversation, he goes, I got it, thanks. And I'm like, you're welcome. No idea what I did, but it clicked. So what makes that happen? And by the way, has anybody ever had an experience like that where you're coaching someone, you're really committing to your coaching mindset, you're keeping your mindset in place, and all of a sudden things click for your clients and you're like, what just happened? That's one of the unique things that we do, that we bring to the table as coaches, that I think raises the ceiling for our clients. Now, it's not the only thing we do, but that's an amazing thing when you're focused on client outcomes and only client outcomes. Those discoveries that your client makes become even more important. And I would suggest to you that in coach training, we talk about this, but it's hard to get a real sense of just how powerful that is until we're out there in the wild, working with clients and watching them connect the dots in ways that we never could. Now, here's the secret sauce to all of that. Come in focused on client outcomes exclusively, but remember, there's a unique way that you're going to do that. Now, one of the things that I do is, and you're probably getting a sense of this, I'm a little bit of a knucklehead. I am not afraid to diffuse tense situations with humor, sometimes borderline inappropriate humor. I'm not afraid to do that. If that doesn't work with the client that I'm working with, I'm probably not the right coach. That's just a part of the experience. Now, I can do that with my brother. I mean, he's known me my entire life. He's older than I am. And I'm happy to point that out to you, even though you don't know him. My brother is notably older than I am. The fact of the matter is that I'm not, we can laugh about that. The trick is to know, when do your unique tendencies help your client make connections, and when are they getting in the way? One of the hard things I had to learn in coach training, because of my coaching mindset, is that humor is not always helpful. Because you can diffuse the tension in a situation really easily, but sometimes it's the tension that's going to springboard your client to making that new and different connection that they otherwise might not have been able to make. So your coaching mindset, how you'll help the client connect the dots, how you'll stay focused on what your client is actually after, as opposed to what you might be after for them, and how you can do that in such a way that only you could deliver that outcome. That's what we're after when it comes to my coaching mindset. Now, Georgina, I saw your face light up at least once as we were describing that. You have some experience with these things, don't you?
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan, by the way, too. I love what you had to say. And I want to add to that some of my best coaching opportunities, and some of the times that I felt like I had the most aha moments, came from situations where I had zero experience. So as I listen to you talk, I think about, I can't consult in those situations. So all I have left is my coaching skills. When I'm coaching individuals where I don't work in their environment, I don't completely, like you were talking about your brother with the attorney, being an attorney, don't completely understand all their language, I can do some of my best coaching, because what I'm left with is I'm there to create awareness with them. I'm there to ask good questions. I'm there to share observations. I'm there to challenge them. But I cannot come with my consulting, because I am a recovering consultant. I cannot come with my consulting background because I don't have that background. And so it puts me in that lane very strictly of being a coach. And so when we think about mindset, one of the things I think is really helpful is to always walk in with that mindset, even if I am working with someone where I do have the same background, to set all that aside and keep that mindset of, how can I help them discover? How can I not be in a position to be telling them, but to be asking really good questions? So just not knowing their background, and it sounds counterintuitive when I talk to students and individuals about it, or I'm working with someone who wants to know if I have a background in their area and I explain that, it seems a little counterintuitive, but I actually think it works really well to helping us have that coaching mindset that you're talking about, that you were mentioning earlier. So that's all. That's kind of what I thought.
I love that. I love that. And I think about one of my students really giving me a hard time. I think you can summarize sort of this mindset shift in, I never want to talk about teaching coaches to listen or teaching coaches to ask questions. Now, my mother was an English teacher, so I know that when you take a noun and add an ing to it, does anybody know what that's called? It's called a gerund, gerund. We gerondize those nouns to make them into verbs, and they move from being passive to being active. So I think it's very important to remember that a big part of our coaching mindset is questioning. That's different than asking questions.
Yeah.
When you come in with a mindset of questioning,
Mhm.
it becomes much easier for those clients to make connections on their own. And
Yeah.
and I love your point about, sometimes it works better when you don't have any idea what their background is.
Yeah, I feel like it's been some of my best coaching has been done in that arena. And I love what Chris and Ashley say in the chat. Chris said, great point, innocently curious. I love that. And then Ashley talks about being outside your domain, silencing the ego so you can be there for the client. So I love what you guys had to say there. I think that's spot on.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it's clicking. Now, one of the things you might think about is when you think about your ideal client, is your client going to ask for someone who has experience in their specific domain? Or will they be open to someone who doesn't? I mean,
right.
It can make a huge difference. If they're looking for that, they might be looking more for a mentor.
Right, or a consultant. And I think, Jonathan, the question becomes then, I think it's our job to question and have a really solid conversation with that client to understand if they want a mentor or they want a coach or they want a consultant. Because like you and I both indicated, we do consulting. I mean, if that's what they want, we can certainly provide that. But if they want coaching, that's different. And being very clear in the beginning with a client about what we can and cannot do, or what they're hiring us for. Because if they say we want a coach, and then in effect they really want a consultant, it's frustrating for everybody because we're going in with the mindset of a coach when they really want us to come in and consult. And so making sure we're real clear with people. And I don't know why you're laughing, but I'm laughing a little bit because sometimes I think I've been really clear, but we get in there and they want something different. They actually do want me to coach. I mean, sorry, consult with them.
Yeah.
So.
I'm laughing partly about a situation like that, but do you remember the old joke? What are the 3 most important rules in coaching?
And they are?
Number 1, the client does the work.
Yes, I remember that one.
Number 2, the client does the work.
And number 3?
Say it with me now. The client does the work. It's that discovery mindset that speaks into all this. It all fits together.
Right. I love telling them you're going to do all the work and pay me. That's my favorite part.
No, I've never said that, but I guarantee you I will be.
So.
Awesome.
All right. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about running a coaching business. So, I don't know how many of you on here are actively running your business, if you're in getting ready to start one, if you've just started, or if you've been in the coaching business for years. But I do want to share a couple of things that were really helpful for me in the beginning, were a couple of these things that are on the slides. The first thing, I'm going to go a little bit out of order, but one of the things that I would say was the most helpful to me in starting my coaching business was my ability to network and my ability to partner. Jonathan spoke a little bit earlier about how he was a student of mine in one of my classes. And actually in that situation, I was partnering with another gentleman who had a coaching business, a thriving coaching school. And it was early in my career. And I started out partnering with him. And that really helped launch my business, because what it did is it gave me opportunities, like Jonathan was talking about, to teach, gave me opportunities to coach. It allowed me to actually see somebody else running a business. And I was fortunate in that this individual mentored me and really helped me kind of understand what to do in my business and how to launch it. So you can quit your job and go straight into it, and that's awesome. You can work part-time and start your coaching business part-time and network with some other more established coaches who have additional business that they cannot do on their own. You could swim in somebody else's pool, as I call it, where you're actually some of their contract coaches, and that's where you're getting most of your business until you can establish yourself on your own. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. And what I did when I first started is I decided I was going to do it as a side business because I was already working in that field in corporate America, coaching and training development. And then I went and found somebody who I thought was doing it exceptionally well. And I partnered with them and became a contract for them when they had extra business. And that eventually worked me into my own business. And that eventually worked me into a place where now I have contract coaches that work for me. And I have other people that I provide opportunities for. And that's been really helpful. So I can't underscore that third item there, network and partner. It is probably the single most important thing for me in having a successful business. The other things on this slide are very important, but if I didn't do that third one, I wouldn't be sitting here today where I am. So if I could leave you with anything on this slide, that's what I open up with right now. And that's what I want to really say. Networking and partnering is incredibly important, not only to grow your business, but also to get more business. There'll be a point in time where you can't replicate yourself. I wish we could. It'd be awesome. We can't get any more hours in the day. So to network and partner and have other people you can bring in is really helpful. Now, if I go back up to that very first one, be really clear about who you want to coach. I can tell you right now, I was not clear on that in the beginning at all. I just was like, I'll coach you and I'll coach you and I'll coach you and you and you and you. And that really did not help my cause. So once I really figured out I want to be in the high potential area, I want to be coaching leaders and executives, that helped me narrow down where I'm going to spend my time and who I'm going to go after. I've had people want me to coach CEO of a small business to help them start their business up. That's not my deal. That's not what I enjoy. But I know people who do because I network and partner and I can hand them off. People wanted me to coach them in life coaching. It's not what I do, but I know people I can hand it off to. Coach their kids as they begin college. Nope, not what I do, but I know who I can hand you off to. So be clear, and then again, use your network and your partnership to make sure you know where to take people. Jonathan, you were smiling. I don't want to cover these other points. But
I'm thinking back to my early days in my career. I took on a bunch of weight loss coaching clients.
Okay.
Which, well, I'm 6'6" and I've never weighed more than 205 pounds in my entire life. I haven't lived that world. I don't really relate to that world. And I did it knowing after the first one went okay. Knowing full well that this probably wasn't going to be it, but I wanted to try it.
Right. Yeah.
So that I could rule it out. And I'm glad I did, but I'm even gladder that I don't try to go down that road anymore, because I did what you did. Yeah, I'll coach you. Absolutely. Hey, coaching skills work for everybody. No problem.
That's right.
Let's
I'll
go.
coach you and you and you and you. And I think, in the beginning, from the practical standpoint, we're all trying to get our hours. From a practical standpoint, that's one of the things that might be happening. And so I also think it helps you narrow down. But I would say if I was to go back and do it again, I'd be more clear on where I want to end up. I might take some of those in between to get my hours and my experience, but I'd be really crystal clear on where I want to go. Because the next thing is, where do I find my clients? I want to spend my time in the places that I'm going to find my clients. And I'm not just talking here about joining the chamber or going to conferences or agreeing to be a presenter at certain conferences. I'm also talking about finding other coaches who are doing what you're doing, seeing if you can partner with them. Looking from that perspective, as well as, being involved in the chamber, offering your services at conferences, going to places where you're going to meet people, putting yourself in those situations, asking people for referrals. But where will your clients most likely show up? That's where I want to show up. And then I also, when you think about where to find your clients, one of the best ways to find your clients is with your current clients. They are the people that will tell you, well, they'll tell you, but they'll also tell others, hey, you should talk to Trigina, you should talk to Jonathan. They will give you other clients. So again, once you know who your clients are, you're clear about that, and you start getting those clients, don't be afraid to ask them to share your name with other people, to ask who else you should be talking to in their network. Or can they make a referral? Things like that. So know where to find your clients, get those clients, have them help you get additional clients. And then we talked about networking and partnering. And again, I want to underscore that, like highlight it, underline it. It was the single most important thing for my business, is my ability to do that and find partners. And I will tell you, I have been in business since 2008, and I have partners that I still work with today. And one of the other things I would say, for me, I don't really care who gets the contract with a couple. I have some really close partners I work with, and we hire each other. There are times I'm working for them in coaching. There are times they're working for me in coaching. And it's just a very collaborative and partnering relationship. We all have our own businesses, but we all also work together. And what's wonderful about that network that I have is when we get large contracts, we have the ability to do that because we have each other plus 5 or 6 other people that we can pull onto a contract. And so it's to help you get started, but I would also say, don't let that go once you are successful and started and you have a full practice, because it can change the type of contracts you get based on your network and your ability to collaborate with others and bring people to bear on large contracts, or bring people to bear when you need multiple coaches and you can't do it all yourself. If I didn't have that ability, I would end up at times working for one client. That's not what I want to do. I don't want to work for one client for 6 months. So again, that's really helpful. So the last thing, and we're gonna head into investing in a coaching credential. We're all, here, part of the ICF. One of the reasons I would tell you, and Jonathan I know he'll have some perspective on this, investing in a coaching credential, there's so many reasons that we invest in that credential: our own learning, to understand coaching, to have the credential to show that we have a level of proficiency and professionalism by having and going through the process of getting that credential. The other thing I would say is that organizations are getting very smart, and they are starting to understand that you're saying I have a coaching certificate, they're going to ask you for a credential, not just a certificate from Jonathan's school or my school. They're going to want that credential. And I will see it even baked into contracts, must have an ICF or BCC credential. And coaches that you hire must have all of those credentials. Sometimes I am able to negotiate with a client. They're in a coach training, ICF approved coach training program. Can we put them forth if I, have vetted them? Sometimes they'll allow that. Other times they won't. But the organizations are getting very smart, and they're asking for a credential. And so to be viable in the marketplace, that is another reason you'd want to invest in a credential. At least from my standpoint, that's what I'm seeing a lot of contracts coming through with the request, don't apply unless you have a credential, or upfront, clients asking, do you have a credential? Is it ICF? What level is it? They want to know. Jonathan, I see you shaking your head.
I 100%. I actually, Trigina and my mutual contact is a guy named Val Hastings, who ran the school where I had Trigina as a student. And I told him, I knew him a number of years before I went to the training school. I said to him, the first time someone asks me about my coaching credential, I'll go get one. I started telling him that in about 2008. Now I've been running my own coaching and consulting practice since 2007, started focusing exclusively on coaching in 2008 or 2009. And I started in training in 2012. I used to also tell Val that the third time we get a request at my training school, because I went to the training school with Val knowing that I ran a competing training school, which tells you all you need to know about the character of this particular individual, that he was willing to make that happen for me and has been nothing but an ally through the entire process. Incredible. That's the standard to which we should all aspire. I said the third time we get asked about accreditation in the training school, we'll go out and get ICF accredited. Well, it took about 10 days after the first time that I was asked about it for us to have our third inquiry across the board. That was 10 years ago. Now, I would say to you that 75 to 90% of the RFPs that I see for medium to large size organizations include a line about must be credentialed or have a PhD.
You're right. I do see PhD as well.
Yeah.
John, I don't know about you, but I agree with you on the RFPs. I think that's probably 75% is probably right. And I don't know, I don't see very many of them that say or equal education or experience. I don't ever hardly see that. They just want the credential.
And in some states, in the next 2 years, there's going to be state licensing required in a handful of states in this country. And that will make the credential even more valuable. Now, we surveyed about 1,500 of our graduates about a year ago, looking to get a sense of how quickly they made back what they invested in coach training through increased rates, through more clients. And at the ACC level, it was about 9 months. It took about 9 months to see your rates go up and or your client level improve to the point where you had made back what you put in. At the PCC and MCC level, it was between 4 and 6 months. So the credential does pay for itself if you're intentional about it. And then, of course, if you use it as a part of your marketing. So if you get it, make sure you know, don't be afraid to tell people.
Right. Yeah. Jonathan, that comment about don't be afraid to tell people. I got one of my longest standing and best clients I still work with to this day when I was in my coach training, which would have been before 2008. Because I said to them, I'm getting a coaching credential and I need hours. I'll do it for a really inexpensive price for you if you'll write a reference for me on my website. They took me up on it, and I can tell you, I don't work for them for free anymore. That's for sure. And they become an outstanding client. It's because I told somebody. And I got a couple of clients that way by just saying, I need some help. I've got to have hours for my credential. I'd love to come in and work with your organization. And it turned into real clients, paying clients, I'll call them. They were always real, paying clients. So I agree with you. Do not be afraid to tell people about that credential. Once you get it, you should be blasting it to everybody. You have it up. I don't have it on my wall. Good for you. But you should be blasting it to everyone.
Absolutely. It is the kind of thing that will continue to pay dividends. But most people don't look for it. You have to tell them about it. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to do that. It like my high school basketball coach used to say to me, it ain't bragging if it's true. So diving into that. Should we go to the next one?
Yeah, Jonathan, let's do it.
All right. Shifting outcomes. We're all friends here now. We've known each other for, like 40 minutes now. We have a nice history of relationship. I can just be straight with you, right? I can just shoot you straight and okay, I can step up on my soapbox. That's really what I'm asking for. Because I think coach training does us a little bit of a disservice in what it's like to coach once you get finished with training. Here's what I mean by that. In coach training, we talk about, the client has to build clarity. The client has to walk away understanding themselves better. The client will be transformed. In 25 years, I started coaching in April 1997. 25 years and 1 month. I have never once had a client come to me and say, Jonathan, I just need to be transformed. I need to build clarity. No, clients come to us because they have a problem. Something's on fire. Our challenge, once you get out into the real world, once you get out coaching in the wild, is to solve problems first. Put out the fire, people. Now, the difference between doing this as a consultant is a consultant says, here's how I would put out the fire. What do you think? And we are taking a different approach. We're taking that questioning approach. We're using that mindset. We're working with the people that we know are our ideal client. See, it all fits together. Put the fire out, solve problems first, then build clarity. Say, okay, as now that the problem is beginning to be solved, what's becoming more clear to you? It's like a parallel conversation. It's like a parallel conversation. If your client gives you permission, then we get to self-discovery. Hey, what'd you learn about yourself? And I don't think this is what most coach training schools teach. I only know of one that takes this frame. And it's certainly not, and I can say this because I was on the task force that worked on writing these competencies, the competencies. I don't think the competencies point us in this direction. But clients come to us because they've got a problem. Mm-hmm. So let's function that way. Now, think about those three lenses as a Venn diagram, and we operate in there. This is what we do. This is what coaches do, in my opinion, and I appreciated you have Jenny's comment in the chat area from a few moments ago. I'm seeing people who don't know the difference between coaching and mentoring. Well, this is the difference. This right here is the difference. And you know, I'll also throw out to you that I don't ever give definitions. Sometimes clients ask me about it. Hey, what's your definition of coaching? Oh, and how's that definition different than the definition of mentoring? I don't ever answer those questions. What I do instead is say, let's talk about how we would work together. Let's talk about what it would be like. I want to make it real. I want to make it personal. I want to bring it to life. And this is the lens I use. You know what? We're going to work on solving the problems, but we're going to work in such a way so that you solve the problem. You know, and because of that, things are going to become clearer. And you are going to learn about yourself. That's a real world application of that framework that we put in front of ourselves as coaches. But in coach training, it starts with help the client learn about themselves. That's how they're going to be transformed. Clients aren't asking for that. That's not what people come to us for. And I hate to say this, but it's a bonus if we get there. And if we get there and we solve the client's problem, now we're making a difference. That's the way. If we're really client centric, let's say it like this. If we're really client focused, that's the order that things go in, as opposed to seeking transformation, which is a coach priority in too many circumstances, too many situations. So I'm stepping down now off my soapbox, and Trigina, I want to hear from you. Now that I've gone into my, given my complete and total perspective on this, how well does this actually match your experience?
My experience out in are you talking teaching or out in the coaching world?
No, I want to talk about in the real world, because we're talking about after coach training.
After coaching, 100%. No, I mean, no one's ever said, hey, I want some transformation. Maybe when I work with them, I realize we need to solve this problem, but there's this bigger problem going on here. There's this bigger issue with what you're experiencing that we should be discussing. I can't discuss the bigger issue until I can help them solve the problem, because the problem is their pain point and what they are talking to me about right in that moment. Mm-hmm. Once I get that, once I help them with that, then I can say, what are you noticing about yourself? What's happening here? What did you learn about the situation? Yes. Then they're open, because calm. They were, calmer. They have a path forward. They know kind of where they want to go. I liken this, and maybe this is a good example or not. I don't know. Let me throw it out here. I do a lot of emotional intelligence assessment work, and there's 15 competencies in emotional intelligence. And one is self-regard and one is optimism. When I look at somebody's assessment in emotional intelligence, there's also interpersonal skills and reality testing, problem solving, and all of those other competencies. There's 15 of them. If their self-regard scores are low and their optimism scores are low, that means they don't have a good viewpoint of themselves and they have no hope for the future. I cannot start on their interpersonal skills or how they problem solving. I have to start there before I can work on anything else, because that's what will, that underpins everything else. And so when I think about coaching, I think about the pain point or the problem they have. We need to start there, and then we can get to all the other stuff, even though we may see a bigger issue around this presenting issue. We can't start with that transformation because we got to start with the presenting issue here.
Yep.
And so that's what I think we have to be aware of. And we can do all of what Jonathan and I are talking about within the bounds of the competencies. It is just maybe slightly different than how it might appear. Yeah. And I think that happens, Jonathan, tell me what you think from your experience. I think that happens. And this is why I said what I said. When I set the competencies aside, when I can set them aside and be who I am and really look at this client and what they need and what they're coming to me for, I feel like I do more of that. If I'm so focused on the competencies, I think it gets tougher. And I'll see, especially new coaches doing that. And there's that tension between those two. And once you release that tension, and some of it is just your reps, it's getting the reps in. You can release that tension. I think you start doing what we're talking about here, and it all starts to come together.
Love it. That's it exactly. In fact, I have a mentor call in 45 minutes with a client who we're comparing what her recording sounded like when she had 80 hours to now that she has 300 hours, how different those behaviors actually are because of exactly that.
Jonathan, I don't know what your hours are, but with the students that I work with, when I work with them in coaching and I'm mentor coaching them, I feel like those going for their ACC, especially, and that's the realm I tend to kind of work in a lot, is I feel like I start seeing a difference in their coaching. I think it's around 55 to 65, maybe 70 hours. I start seeing this transformation of how they coach. And
absolutely,
I know they don't always love me telling them that many hours. They're like rolling their eyes in the back of their head. And not that some don't come sooner, but that's when I start to go, oh, okay, I'm okay. Now I'm seeing
it. We talk about the last 25 hours of your ACC being completely different than the first 75.
Right. Yeah.
And I would suggest there's another boundary between 300 and 350.
Okay.
Where it's all of a sudden things click in a completely different way. And this is a well, we've had 2,600 students since 2010, and this is cataloging a large portion of those folks through all of this. And then it also matches my own journals from my own journey of paying attention to that. And I'll be honest with you, I still record almost all of my sessions, and I still review two each month of my own coaching,
right?
So that I get a sense of, am I developing any bad habits, and am I diving into this? Because it's a muscle. Coaching is a muscle.
It is. And as hard as it is to listen to ourselves back after I don't love that, but you're right. It helps you understand how you're showing up and what you might want to work on, and what you're doing well, by the way, what you're doing well.
I've snuffed out any number of bad habits from listening back to my own recordings. Now, full disclosure, I got into recording every session because my lawyer brother told me to, because even though there's never been a judgment against a coach in this country, there have been multiple judgments from against ICF coaches around the world. And the only way to be fully protected is to have that documentation. So my lawyer brother said that, and so I got to thinking, and I do record everything that's in my agreements, but I share the recording with the client. I also upload it into otter.ai so that they get a transcription of the recording every time. And it's now a part of the service.
That's a great idea, John.
So they're not, they don't hesitate. They don't think, hey, this is part of the service. And if they really push back hard, then I have to decide how badly I want to coach this particular individual. And I have turned down people who won't let me record them.
Right. I think that service idea is a great idea.
Now the other thing about that though is that changes your mindset as you're recording it. Because think about it. Your recordings for your ICF credential are the only coaching that you will ever do that's about you, the coach. Because when your recording is being evaluated, they're only paying attention to what the coach does.
That's true. Right.
So this is a way to take even that recording and make it about the client, which is what we do anyway. All right, Trajana, I'm taking over your time because this last point is really important.
Oh yeah. Okay. So we're going to do a sprint on this last one, but we will do it justice. So we talk about consulting. So coaching versus, Jonathan talked about mentoring, he talked about consulting. It could be it could be feedback. In the corporate environment, I hear a lot of managers say I'm a coach, and when I delve into it, what they're really doing is giving feedback. Important, it's needed, but it's not coaching. And so we think of consulting, we are both asking questions and we're creating awareness. And in that creating awareness, we could be sharing observations, we could be challenging clients in their line of thinking. The other thing we could be doing is we could be providing perspective or advice or our thoughts or something that is more like consulting. The key, however, and that still is, we can still create awareness there. The key, however, is to do something I call the coaching wraparound, is to do it in a manner in which it isn't telling, but it is sharing a perspective. So here's something I'd like you to think about. Here's something I encourage you to consider. I've seen other people do it really well. Here's something that worked for me. When you put it out there in that manner and you wrap a question around it, you wrap coaching, as I call it, around it and say, how would that work in your environment? How does that land with you? What surfaces up for you when I say that? Or when I ask you to think about this? So you are in essence providing perspective, but you're not telling them. And I believe it all is in the phraseology. And so there is a part, we call this, I've heard this, gosh, Jonathan, I heard this way back whenever I started working with Val. In fact, I think he might have been the one that introduced this to me. I'm not sure, but consulting, this whole thing about you are doing some consulting and you are coaching, but the way I've always looked at this is that coaching is kind of the overriding skill set that I'm using. But I am saying, hey, Stacy, here's a couple of things I would really encourage you to consider as you think through this. How does that land with you, Stacy? I give her whatever it is. How does that land with you? And so I'm still putting her back at the center of being accountable, even though I'm providing perspective. I'm providing maybe advice, if you want to call it that, or I'm providing something else, maybe some learning or just some ideas. And so I tend to use this often in my coaching, and I also make sure that when I'm doing this, I'm not doing this before I've helped the client explore all their possibilities. And I'm not doing this because I think I know better and I want to just move the client along. I'm really doing this because it's going to create awareness. I'm doing this because I'm helping them solve the problem. And I've got some information, I've got some data or whatever it is, ideas that they haven't surfaced up or they don't appear to have. Jonathan and I, when we were kind of talking about what we wanted to talk to you about, one of the things we talked about is that he calls it something slightly different, but I call it this: I'm not ever going to coach anybody off the cliff. I'm just not going to do that. If I see that someone is really going to potentially make a mistake or a career limiting move, I'm going to share that. I'm going to put that out on the table. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to ask them about it. I'm going to put it out on the table. I'm not just going to ask questions. I may share my perspective or my advice and say, hey, here's something that concerns me about this approach. share it with them, ask them what they think about it. What surfaces up for them whenever they hear me say that. And so I've heard it in circles. I don't know if you guys have heard the word or not, but I've heard it called consulting. And I think it is that mix of coaching and consulting, but with coaching being the overriding skill. And it goes back to, I think, the slide that Jonathan just popped up about us being able to solve problems. And there are times we will have a perspective, and we should by all means be able to share that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I am not a big believer. I'm gonna reveal. I'm gonna fly in the face of probably what you were taught in coaching school. I do not believe in the coach maintaining a neutral presence. Partly because there ain't nothing neutral about me on any topic. And I'm tired of fighting that particular battle. But mostly because I think sociology tells us that it's not humanly possible. You know, what's that Jim Rohn used to always talk about how we become the sum of the 5 people we spend the most time with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, if that's true, we can't be a neutral presence, even if we want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, I think, Jonathan, what you and I are talking about right here, in my opinion, I'll call them purist coaches would not love what we're saying here.
Right.
Right. And so I'm not one of the purist coaches. I believe you can blend. And again, overriding skill is coaching when I'm talking about this slide right here. But yeah.
Well, it is notable that when the competencies were updated, powerful questioning was no longer a standalone competency anymore. It became evokes awareness.
It is. And I think it's also notable that it talks about, I feel like it's a 7-point something competency, and there's one in the 5s maybe that talks about giving perspective, but not having ownership to it or something. I can't quote the competency, but I think it's a 7.5 and a 5 something.
Yes.
And so there's at least 2 places, maybe there's one more, where it talks about the coach providing expertise or knowledge, but not being tied to it. So it does go along with what we're saying.
It talks about offering observations.
Yeah.
And then using strategies to evoke awareness, including assessments, metaphors, powerful questions, etc. There are definite pieces to that puzzle. And I can tell you from straight out of the mouth of high-level ICF staffers, and I'll name names, Joel DiGirolamo, who is the ICF's director of research, looked me in the eye and said, we did that on purpose when we were finalizing the description for this competency, because we wanted to acknowledge that there are lots of ways that people work together to come to new insight.
Yeah.
And coaching should be able to use them all. So it's a part of the puzzle. We're not just question asking robots anymore.
I agree with that. I think when you and I got our training way back when, there was way more of a focus on questioning. And I sometimes have to check myself on that because that's how I grew up in coaching. And so
without a doubt,
but yeah, I think we have more freedom today.
Without a doubt. And that is something to absolutely embrace. So on that note, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have, and I think we have we're at 1 o'clock. Well,
yeah, thank you.
We have
so much.
seconds to.
No seconds, but we could. I could stay on for a few more minutes.
Me too.
Okay,
afterwards.
that'd be great. I'm just going to share quickly here, and thank you. And so we'll hop right back. Just for those who have to hop off here at the top of the hour, see if I can share my screen here.
Oh, let me stop sharing mine.
It should bounce over here. Let's see.
Okay.
Here we go. And where do I put play?
Slideshow.
There we go. Thank you. So basically today we had a practitioner's conversation. We hope you all can continue to join us. Tomorrow we have Mary Kravitz will be joining us for More Clients, Less Marketing. We have a special double feature, 2 coaches joining us on Wednesday. And we have Becky Tibbetts and Marcy Almond will be with us, helping clients thrive. And then Friday, Chris Coachella will be joining us for High Performing Decisions. Thank you all so very much for being with us today. Thank you, Trajina and Jonathan. That was awesome. I love the challenging. It was very thought-provoking. It was fun. You guys had great inner, the way you talk is awesome. So I hope you can continue to work together, but I'm going to hand it back over to you for those who have questions here. We'll go for about a few more minutes and then I'll have to hop off as well, but thank you so much. Wonderful to see you both. Go ahead and reshare or I'll close out here.
Thanks, Amber, for the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Definitely appreciate it. So now's your chance.
Thanks for the
ask
comments.
us anything.
Now it's like crickets, Jonathan.
Yeah, that's how it goes sometimes.
I should call on a couple of former students I see out there, but I won't put them on the spot. They're laughing. They're probably all going to jump off now.
That's what my former students always do when I threaten to call them out like that. They're gone before you can say another word.
Yeah, exactly.
Gina, I think Gina has a question there, Gina. Or Tanya?
You both described kind of the transition that happens with hours of practice and coaching. From your perspective, do you see that as possibly the difference between really knowing and understanding and internalizing your craft and then incorporating that into how you show up, or do you feel that something else is happening there?
I think there's 3 phases. I really do think there's three things that are going on kind of simultaneously. One is, intellectually just learning the skills is one thing. Then the second thing is getting into a groove where it begins to happen naturally, I think is the second phase. Then I think there's a third phase, which not everybody gets to, truthfully, not everybody needs to, which is, what is it about my unique wiring that might point me to coach this way as opposed to some other way? Now, like, for example, one of the things I learned is that coaching jargon, like, I'm going to hold space for the client right now. It doesn't sound natural coming out of my mouth. So some coaches really make that work. I'm not one of them. So being able to acknowledge that there are some things that are just going to fit what you do better than other things do. And as a result, you may have to adapt. You may have to tailor what you're doing a little bit. And I think it's those 3 things. One is just intellectually learning the skills, practicing them so they happen sort of naturally, and then adjust as you become aware of your context even a little further. I think all 3 of those things are happening in all of us simultaneously with different weighting based on where you are in the journey.
Yeah, when you asked that question, Jenna, it made me think about the quadrants from unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence, I think it is. I can't remember the model, actually what it's called, but anyways, and I think you go through all of that, and it's really similar to what Jonathan was saying. And when you get to that point, in my opinion, when that tension breaks that I talked about earlier, when you break that tension, you come into that third point that I think Jonathan's talking about, and also there's that unconscious competence where I just do it. I do it in my training. I coach whenever I'm talking with people. I use a coach. There's a difference between coaching and a coach approach, in my opinion. I use a coach approach in a lot of different arenas, like my teenagers. It's really helpful to use a coach approach with them. But I use it in different arenas. And when I started being able to do that and not thinking about it, I knew that it was more ingrained into who I was. And now what I can do is think about, what's my context? Who's sitting in front of me, and How do I need to just shift how I normally and authentically show up? But what's the shifts that I need to make if I'm coaching Jenna versus Chris? What do I need to do? And so that's where my mind starts to go now, because I'm not so focused on it anymore. And again, I see it coming out in different avenues of my life. And I think that is when I realized I've internalized it.
Yeah, that's really a good way to think about it. And that the conscious competence framework, that's exactly what we're talking about. When you get to unconscious competence or subconscious competence, which is neurologically a little more accurate, that actually involves stepping back and reflecting on what's going well and what's not going, and making intentional choices, and then letting that integration process take place. So it probably is pretty much exactly what we're talking. We're talking about pretty much exactly the same things.
Being able to do that in the moment and being able to flex right in the moment and know what we're doing here. And Jonathan, I think you might agree with me on this. You can see that changes with a mentor coach you've been working with, when they all of a sudden get there, when they start progressing towards that end of the continuum. It's I don't know if they can always see it, but I can start to see it. I'm like, oh yes, okay, we are moving into that unconscious competence right now. We're getting there.
Yes, that's it exactly. Is it's tangible when they're really moving that way. The change is tangible.
Yeah. And I think we can feel it in ourselves. Like I remember when I started, the tension broke. I remember when that happened, I was like, oh, okay, it feels a little bit different. And I feel like I started enjoying it a lot more personally.
Thank you both.
Yeah.
Hi, Gina and Jonathan. I don't know how much time that you both have, but we have one question on chat, and that is, how much do you charge for coaching on RFPs for winning bids?
Depends on what you're asking me to do. I'm not trying to sidestep the question, but it does depend on what you're asking me to do. I've got one contract. It's part of a leadership development program. There are 20 people in there, and there's several things they're asking that the coaches, from assessments to other things that we work with the client on in addition to coaching. That's going to be very different than a contract that's straightforward, that comes to me and says, I have a vice president or an EVP that needs 12 sessions of coaching. We'd like it to be 1 hour. This is what I want you to do. So it really does depend. What I would say, what I would offer as some perspective is, I wouldn't just count my coaching hours. When you think about a coaching hour, it's made up so much more of you just being in that hour with the client. What about your marketing? What about your admin? What are you going to do before and after the coaching call, if anything, for that client? And so it really you need to look at everything that goes into that coaching hour. Are you sending them follow-ups? How often, are you doing all the scheduling? What does that look like when you're outside that coaching hour with that client?
Yeah.
And so it depends on how complex it is. I have very complex contracts and I have really straightforward contracts. And so it's really a hard question to answer, but that's some perspective I would provide in terms of when you think through what you want to charge or what a contract should entail.
Everything Georgina said. For your coaching hourly rate, which I think is where most coaches find themselves, the coaching hourly rate, I would suggest there are 3 factors that go into it. Number 1, how much coaching experience do you have? Like last time I totaled my numbers up, I had 7,800 coaching hours. It's a lot. Secondly, how much training do you have? And at what level? I think that's a factor. Some clients will ask you about that. And then the third component I would throw out is, do you have a credential? And what level that credential in may or may not actually make a difference. But that's a core component. Now, the other thing to factor in, I would throw in, is that I think Tradina is opening exactly the conversation that most clients forget about, is they want to drive their hourly coaching rate up to some level, some number. But, there's 40 hours in the work week. And if you're a small business owner, you're working any 80 of those 40 hours that you want, because that's the nature of being a small business owner, but you're not coaching 40 hours. 40 hours at $300 an hour each week. I think we could all scrape by on that, or at least get close to scraping by on that. But that's not the reality. Like, I have 16 monthly clients right now. That's 4 hours a week. What are you doing with the other 36 hours? There's marketing, there's operations, it's all those kinds of things. And your coaching revenue has to cover those hours as well, very practically speaking.
Right.
And nobody told me that when I was in training. I was running my own thing like 4 or 5 years before I realized that. And that made me go, oh crap. No wonder I feel like I'm sweating it out every month.
Right.
Yeah. And sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm sorry that we've come to the end of our time, and we just really want to thank both of you. This was such a wonderful presentation. I have learned so much. So thank you again.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, and happy International Coaching Week.
That's right. Enjoy your week, everyone. Happy coaching. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.